Hello, it's Matt from Flood Fridays. Today we're going to be having a look at how to change the propeller on one of our outboard motors, as well as covering some of the tools we're going to be requiring to do this, points to consider, and the small nuances between models that are going to make this process slightly different. The main reason we're going to be doing this, obviously working in a flood rescue environment, we are more likely to damage our props, be it if we strike something, so we need to be able to problem solve as well as effectively change it to restore operational capability. Before we start working on the prop, we need to take some steps to make sure the motor doesn't accidentally start as per the manufacturer's instructions. To do so, we want to make sure our gear selector is in neutral, our key is in the off position, and our battery is preferably isolated. We also need to disconnect our spark plugs. So removing the cowling, and again, these can be in different positions depending on your motor, but then these are going to be our spark plug leads. Sequencing does matter, and we're just going to be disconnecting them on either side, making sure that when we put it back together, the sequencing is matched and going from there. So now that we're working on the prop, first thing we want to do is remove this nut. So it does have a retention system. On this one, it's a plate that squeezes on. So we're going to get a screwdriver and just bend those plates out. Once those plates are sufficiently out of the way, we're going to get a socket or spanner. And because we don't want to be grabbing onto this because it could have sharp edges, we're going to get a sacrificial piece of timber, wedge it inside, and then loosen it off. Once it's sufficiently loose, we can grab on. Consider wearing gloves for this. Once that nylock is off, the entire assembly is going to come apart. So we've got that nut, we've got our retaining plate, we have the first plate, the first metal disc, our prop, and then there's one more on the rest of the prop. So we're just going to remove all of those parts, and then we're going to put all the new bits on. So now these are the components that have come out of our prop change kit. What we're going to do before we're attaching this onto our motor is we want to seat our drive sleeve in. So the drive sleeve comes in two separate components, and we've got a bunch of fins. Now on these fins we've got 4 points where the fins are slightly larger, and we want to line them up with the slightly larger grooves again on the other component. That's going to sit nicely. We're not going to see any light coming out of it, and then we're going to drop that in to the back of our prop. Once that's set in, we're going to get the drive sleeve adapter, and we're going to drop that in again, and we're going to really gently tap it in until that drive sleeve adapter is sitting flush on our prop. Now this is ready to get installed back on the motor. So now that we're going to install our propeller onto our drive shaft, the manufacturer's instructions are to grease up the spline shaft prior to performing any install. In a field operation, this may be impractical. Just remember, if we aren't doing this, that we need to get our motor serviced as soon as possible after an event. So first part we're going to be doing is the thrust washer. This has a nice gentle edge. We want that facing down towards the bottom of our shaft. Then we've got our propeller. We've seated that previously. We're going to be installing that on, making sure it's indexing in, and making sure this back plate isn't spinning either. Next we have our tab washer. So this is what's going to be holding our nut in place. And then finally we have the locking nut with its nylocker. We're just going to do that up with our fingers until it starts engaging on the nylock. And then we're going to get our shifter and again our block. Remembering, we don't want to be fighting against these blades as we're going to install. Again, manufacturer's instructions say that this nut needs to be torqued to 76.4 kilonewtons. This may not be possible in the field, so we're going to make it as tight as feasible, and then we're going to bend up our tabs on the side of our washer. We can remove our piece of timber. Going to bend up these tabs. Again, if we're doing this repair in the field, we want to have a service technician having a look at it before we're done. This is an emergency repair to get us out of a bad situation.